Good morning or afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Learning Bar, I'd like to welcome you to our panel discussion. My name is Joel Henderson. I'm a research associate at the Learning Bar, and we are so excited you could join us today to hear from our special guests. But before we begin, the Learning Bar would like to acknowledge the traditional ancestral territory of the First Peoples in our respective locations on which we are learning, working, and gathering today, and we pay our respects to the members past and present with honor and gratitude as they have stewarded the land throughout the generations. And I'm confident that we will continue to work together in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Today's panel explores how blending traditional perception data with photovoice, a participatory research method where students use photography to express their lived experiences, can uncover powerful insights to inform school improvement efforts. Our experts will share strategies to strengthen student voice and enhance surveys and ensure student experiences inform real change in schools. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. Firstly, Noel Burke, founder of the Next School Initiative, the future of high school. With 50 years of experience in education, Noel has become a recognized champion of lifelong learning, a successful agent of change, and a sought-after consultant and speaker on educational and institutional innovation. He is the founder of Learn and the Community Learning Center initiatives in Quebec, the Quebec English-Speaking Communities Research Network, and the School of Extended Learning at Concordia University. He is also the co-founder and lead designer of the Next School Initiative, advocating for the personalization of learning and the professionalization of teaching through structural transformation of the high school environment. And he is currently a member of the Quebec Education Ministry's Advisory Board on Education and a sessional lecturer for graduate studies in educational leadership at McGill University. As the principal partner in EndWorks Consulting, Noel continues to provide consultation services to educational stakeholders, leadership coaching to educational administrators, as well as career coaching to transitioning youth and adults. And also joining us today, Vanessa Gold, a PhD candidate in the Department of Integrated Studies of Education at McGill University, studying pedagogical change processes in secondary and post-secondary schools. The research areas informing her works include student voice, educational change, photo voice, and action research. Vanessa is currently overseeing the implementation of the Next School in Quebec, Canada, and she seeks opportunities for collaboration, innovation, and creativity wherever possible. So I'm excited to welcome both of our panelists, and I know their insights will leave you inspired with practical ideas and actionable strategies you can put into practice. So today we'll be starting things off with a kickoff question, followed by a 30-minute panelist discussion. At the end of the discussion, we'll open the floor to any questions our attendees may have. So if you have burning questions you'd like to ask yourselves, that would be the best time for them. So Noel, Vanessa, thank you for joining us today, and let's get started. So now, Noel, you've been working with innovative models of schooling and data collection on school change with a particular focus on student engagement. How does the Our School Tell Them From Me survey fit into all this?
Thank you for the invitation, Joel. I'd go with that. Uh, Thank you for the invitation and the chance to share our experience. My experience with our school and the Learning Bar, previously and currently for some, the Tell Them From Me survey, opens the door to access to student thinking about school in ways that were not present before such a survey as the Learning Bar has put together. And more particularly, the fact that it provides access to all of the students in a school or a grade level or whatever the case may be, rather than individual initiatives at the school or the school board level. And so in doing so, it inspires us to start to think of seeing school through the student perspective. And so that's been our journey. This was previously when I worked in the school board in the late 90s. I had the opportunity to meet with Doug Williams and discuss the project at its inception stages. And we've followed through over time and started to use the the data from the Our School survey to sort of get a sense of where we're going with Next School, whose ambition is to improve or enhance the learning experience, and more importantly, to improve the level of engagement of students in high school, which we'll see in a few moments, really is at an ebb tide, if we want to put it that way. So Vanessa and I have prepared a presentation for about half an hour, starting with Next School and the connection to the Learning Bar, Our School, and Tell Them For Me survey, and then going into what we think is an enhancement and enrichment of that starting point of student perceptions around school, to really doing a deep dive on what they really mean when they express these perceptions to us in a survey format. So we're going to have a quick overview of Next School, a framework for sustainable school change. Where does the Tell Them For Me, Our School survey fit in? Measurable improvements and why we need them, and using data for school improvement and student well-being. Really, we're at the point of, now that you've got the data, if you're engaged in the Our School survey, and I'll use the term Our School throughout, but it refers to, I know some participants may be still using the terminology of Tell Them For Me. So you've got the data from Our School now. What do you do with that, and how do you unpack that? And finally, and that'll be the main part of our presentation sharing with you today, is Vanessa's work with photovoice. So what started us off on the Next School adventure, which was to really kind of reinvent the high school experience, was this juxtaposition of two sets of data. One, on the left side, you see the academic success rate. This is the completion rate of students completing high school in Quebec, which is about, in the English sector schools of the province, about 85%. And when we look at really, if we do a composite of some of the measures of the Our School survey that represent student engagement, we see it at a level of about 30%. So that really struck us heavily, not just the low end of student engagement, the low indicator of student engagement, but this, what we call this gap between academic success and student engagement. And our assumption from this was that students really know how to play the game, and the game is pass the exam and matriculation exams, but maybe they're not interested in that game anymore. And so it brought around the curious question of, well, what does engagement really mean, and why are these results so low? So we started by looking at a large survey that was done in the States in the early 2000s of what are students' expectations of school today. And we're talking all throughout here, high school students. They want to be involved in the co-creation of knowledge, not just the acquisition of it. They want to have generic and transferable life skills, interdisciplinary and applied learning, career and personal growth orientation, real-world problem-solving challenges, and entrepreneurial and leadership experiences. And so when we look ourselves in the mirror as educators, we're asking the question, well, how are we addressing those expectations? And they're very real expectations, and those expectations in informal survey and facilitated workshops are shared by teachers and parents and others. And so it led us to think of Next School as a reinvention of high school. Think of Next School from a structural point of view. Our assumptions were supported by a 10-year study of OECD on innovative learning environments, and any of the participants who want to understand what are the most innovative practices worldwide, that is to say in the developed country members of OECD, which are about 68 countries around the world. This was a study as to what are the most successful uh, or the factors or the elements of the most successful innovations in high school around the world. So very interesting reading. There's about 5 publications attached with this. I've only highlighted 2 of them here. One of them, Schooling Redesigned, and which was an earlier publication. The later one, Measuring Innovation in Education 2019. And this is the source of these factors. Um, and so 3 key features or essential elements are common to all of these innovative learning environments. We also did visits to about 16 innovative schools in New York State, Colorado, California, Ontario, British Columbia, and found again these 3 elements common to the structured environment of high school. One of them is a daily student check-in. Students in small groups of about 10 to 15 students with a teacher coach start the day off and plan the day ahead and reflect on the day previous. Second element is student flex time, about an hour a day, where students have access to alternative courses such as remediation and enrichment in their academic studies, interest courses, be it music, dance, uh, variety of interests, and life skills courses. So you start to see this pattern of responding to those student expectations that were shared in an earlier slide. And finally, teacher flex time, building into the daily workload of a teacher, not the evenings, not the weekends, not, lunchtime, but building into the teacher's workload and schedule, teacher flex time, where they can spend time collaborating with other teachers around interdisciplinary projects, around interdisciplinary and complementary learning, around literacy across the curriculum, just to use some examples of that. And so these 3 features are common to all these innovative schools. So I won't spend a lot of time around Next School. There is a website that'll give you access to the research team, of which Vanessa is a member, that has done the work, including a set of research briefs on the various elements of school innovation. So that brought us to start to think about how we would implement such a structure in schools. And we started working with schools around using the Stanford, it says Stratford, it's not, it's Stanford design thinking modes. Something happened in the graphic translation there. Um, uh, and this is human systems design thinking. So design thinking is pretty universal, but the human systems design thinking has a real emphasis here on empathy, and that is engaging with the primary users in an organization or an institution around looking at uncovering emotions and seeking stories and starting to understand what is the user's experience, because often as educators, we apply adult solutions to our perception of what adolescent problems are. And too often, without actually paying attention to adolescents. So our school survey, as I said earlier, opens the door to that conversation, but it doesn't complete it. So here's an idea, and so this kind of first level thinking that occurs with most of the participants around the our school survey is comparative data. So looking at the patterns over time. These are 4 measures that we extracted from the Our School survey from our first pilot school to look at what are the patterns that are existing. And I just want to call your attention to this lower one here, motivation, which is student responses to the question and a compilation of the percentage of students who are interested and motivated in their learning. And 2 things that I'd call your attention to. One is that we're really around 32%. So that's similar to the data I gave you on the first slide we looked at. But we also see a pattern that is declining over time. So we see from over a 2-year period, 23 to 25, we see a decline from 40%. These blue boxes are Canadian aggregates to 32%. And in our own school, a decline of 8%, and in the school, our own pilot school, 9%. And so, uh, as I said, our school is very powerful at opening the door and having us zoom in and focus um, with a need to really engage in what do we do with that data? What do we do with that data? How do we understand such a striking number that, a drop of 9% from 32% from 27% in the case of our pilot school is quite dramatic. And so we started thinking of how we could possibly use an extension of the Our School survey, and we've kind of identified four levels of intervention. The level one is what we've just seen, looking at quantitative data from the Our School survey, complemented by summary analysis of measures, depending. Many people don't actually engage in analysis of the data. Level two, accompaniment and further data analysis, and they do receive this from the Learning Bar, I believe, on request. Level three is where we're talking about today, this notion of introducing qualitative data that gets us to understand when a student says, I don't feel motivated by learning, what do I really mean by that? And so when you look at a whole school of, 1,000 or more students expressing a sense of lack of motivation, it's not a uniform cause for that. And so level four would be a follow through with further focus groups on that qualitative data. So I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa at this point. And what we have discovered in our own work, and Vanessa has brought this to the table, the strategy and the technique of photo voice and bringing really that notion of seeing school through students' eyes and bringing data to life. Vanessa?
Thanks so much, Noel. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to meet you again. I'm Vanessa Gold. I'm a PhD candidate at McGill University. I'm also a teacher. I'm an artist. And so while you hear all of these things that I'm going to share with you today, that's kind of what's informing what I did with students and what I continue to do. Just for a little context, I've been following Next School since 2018, and over the last 2 years was overseeing its implementation at a high school in Quebec. And my focus is on student involvement and educational change with photo voice as a potential tool to really authentically engage students in that process. I've done this now with many schools, and that's why I'm here today. I've got the expertise, and I'm very excited to share that with you today. And I do get very excited about the work that I do, so I may speak a little quickly. Noel's going to maybe tell me to slow down. But since the underlying goal of Next School is to improve and increase student engagement, that's what's guiding the whole thing. The work that I do is about understanding student engagement in learning. And you can see that displayed behind me. Here's a final exhibition that some students did. So here are kind of to give you a sense of the size of a photo voice and the impact that something like this can have. I'm just going to do a quick tour. These panels are about 2 by 4 feet. Some of them are bigger. And you can see that when you take a look standing back, they already tell you what it's all about. And that's an insight that I learned from students themselves, who told me that the act of completing the photo voice was engaging in and of itself, and that it kind of stands out as their main message. So here you can see on this slide is that we're trying to use this as a way to address some of the pain points that people have when in schools, and in how to use like the data that you have that is maybe you don't, there are so many different things that you can interpret with. There's so many different types of results. So where do you even start? How do you use the results to actually make positive impact in your context? And how do you authentically understand student experiences? Next slide, please. So what is photo voice? You can go to the next slide. I already jumped into my intro. So in my context, it's a research method where people basically just take pictures in response to some sort of guiding question or prompt in order to share their lived experiences. But to take that one step further, they provide narrative captions with the photograph. As much as a picture tells 1,000 words, what we'll see later is how important those captions are for really specifying what it's all about for them and what their experiences really are like. So the idea is to spark dialogue towards change, and you'll see that students, when you ask them, they really tell you what their experiences are, and they have many really powerful ideas for change. So on this slide, you can see in the middle there is just an example of what you can expect in terms of what the output looks like. And on the right, you can see the basic overview of how to do it. So you're going to choose a prompt, take pictures, write captions, find themes, and then eventually maybe come up with an exhibit kind of like this one. Next slide, please. So we're here to talk about how photo voice is a complementary method for deepening insights from your survey findings. And a really helpful way to visualize this is with the student voice pyramid. This is adapted from Mitra and Gross 2009. That I highly recommend reading that article and work by these authors. So if you look at level 1, surveys, questionnaires, interviews, and focus groups are how many experts in student voice research talk about being really powerful ways to seek youth input. Because when you're working with youths, seeking their input about their experiences helps them feel heard, and the opportunity to see their ideas and experiences realized builds their own ownership about what they've shared, and also helps build trust with the adults that they're working with. So student voice advocates for student involvement in research about youth, but I'm showing this here, even though it's a research context, that this is helpful to apply in pedagogical contexts as well. So the Tell Them From Me, or Our School survey, really targets that foundational level of being heard. And I cannot stress enough how important of a first step this is. So once you've got your survey results and you figure out how you want to decide to focus, whether that be from whether your administration is just going to take the lead and choose an area of focus, whether you're going to have a discussion with staff at a meeting to decide on the areas that maybe you'll individually focus on in your different classrooms. There's many ways to start exploring photo voice and to start using it to deepen your inquiry. So minimum is listening to youths. Second, when we want to deepen our inquiry, building in opportunities for collaborating with adults. Some examples here are with photo voice, or having students map their experience, like where are the areas in the school that you go to most, doing some visual or narrative storytelling. And then the ultimate, most powerful way that you can deepen insights from survey data is by building leadership capacity. And that involves really helping students develop skills to lead within your school context. You could go to the next slide.
But before I do,
Yeah.
It also broadens leadership, right? So when you see examples of
Yeah.
student council and model UN, and when we look characteristically, I know it's a bit of a stereotype, when we look at the students who are usually involved in these kinds of activities, they're students that are excelling. What Photo Voice allows us to do is look at that broad spectrum of students across the spectrum of academic success, socioeconomic background, whatever the case may be, and broaden that sense of leadership, and not just always be focused on those students who excel at school. Because when we look at that motivation stat at the beginning at 17%, whoa, that's not the people on student council. That's not, and therefore those students typically in those adult solutions are not being addressed, those students who are most or least engaged.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. And also just to build on that is that when leadership is conceptualized in research, students are often not named as leaders. So if you're going to, you can use this as an opportunity not only to support students who already exhibit leadership skills and who are really keen to be involved in school decision-making processes, building leadership skills, because like I said, photo voice is really applicable to many pedagogical classrooms. You can contexts, you can do it with an entire class, you can do it with a small group of students, you can like large scale, small scale, it's really diverse. So it actually allows you to help support the development of these kinds of skills across the student body. So
And if we go back to, sorry, Vanessa, if we
no,
go
no,
back
keep
to
going.
that list of student expectations, the results of that study were that students that behave badly in school, disengage, and drop out of school in the direct correlation to the absence of those kinds of experiences, co-development of knowledge, real life problem solving, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a direct correlation between our lack of response to those needs, and that's why we need to dig deeper. Sorry, go
So
ahead.
what you can see on this slide, and I've just taken this out of a real example of survey response. When you go into whatever your findings are, maybe something in your context stands out for you. And because interest and motivation are factors of engagement, and that was the area of our focus, we chose to look at this. And so we've got these snapshots of where we're at in terms of interest and motivation. So the question is, what do we do next? We have so much data. There's so many ways to interpret this. And beyond that, as a teacher myself, I understand that there's not enough time and not enough capacity to figure out not only when am I going to take this data, look at it, parse through it, analyze it, who am I going to talk to, who's responsible for leading it, then on top of that, to develop the resources and then implement and practice and learn and try and fail, carve out time in an already very loaded curriculum. Like, I understand that it's a lot to take on. So I'm here to simplify that and show you that it's a really practical and accessible way. There's resources included in this presentation as well. And I'm really excited to engage with you on this after the fact. So then you can go to the next slide now, Noel.
Oh,
At first,
I
oh
did
yeah, go
want to
ahead.
just reference something that we observed when we were preparing the slides. Look at this, 12% of the girls and 23% of the boys were interested and motivated, which is a reversal of our ongoing assumption and proven in results. School girls tend to achieve at a better rate than boys do. Yet here's that same juxtaposition of performance and expectations that are different in relation to school engagement.
Yeah, and that only goes to underscore how different results will be from context to context. And
Mhm.
so knowing what to do once you get those results. Anyway, yada yada. Next slide. So here I wanted to underscore again how the Learning Bar already has developed a lot of really helpful post-survey resources. This is just so that you know what it looks like. And when I was digging into what I wanted to share with you, I went through all of these different resources so that I could show you the application in a real context. But things like a follow-up PowerPoint or a focus group are a really helpful next step. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So here's an example of the post-survey dialogue that is part of the Learning Bar's resources. So it's called a we asked, you said, we said, we say. This is their template for that. And so what this serves to do is highlight the fact that people did ask students about their experiences. Students told them about what was their experience, and they're highlighting what the students actually said. Being heard, having opportunities to follow up with students continues to underscore the building trust, the feeling safe, the ownership, understanding that people actually care and are really trying to improve things for students. So you've got acknowledging the fact that you were asking, summarizing back to students to tell them this is what you did say, and then offering in the final section, we say, is showing that you're taking accountability to the students, demonstrating, hey, we're coming up with solutions and we want you to continue to be involved in something like a focus group. And we notice this problem area. So interest and motivation is down, and we need to know a little bit more so we can better interest and motivate you at school. Not only that, you're using visual diagrams here to show them in an alternative way because we want to target different types of learners. And on top of that, you can use this information within curricular context to help students apply numeracy, skills in a real life relevant situation. You can get students to interact with creating narratives or writing responses or reflecting on what they said. Why do you think we have such low interest and motivation? Or why do you think maybe this has jumped up? Why do you think we've improved from the year before? Anyway, so I want you to take a moment now. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to figure out if this post-survey dialogue and this focus group opportunity is level 1, 2, or 3. I just want you to think and decide. If you said level 1, you're correct. You can go to the next slide. So we're still at level 1, even though we've done this. So what we want to do now is, even though this is really helpful information, we're moving it towards identifying the problem area to focus on, and then situating the problem for students. Now, you might be overwhelmed with what to specifically focus on. When we did, we downloaded a snapshot from the learning bar. Just because I knew engagement was relevant to me, I arbitrarily chose motivation and interest. This is what I'm trying to highlight to you is start anywhere. Maybe you have particular goals relevant to your school, or maybe you're just personally interested in motivation and interest, or maybe you're interested in what the school environment feels like. It is better to start somewhere than not at all, and situating the problem from any one of those areas in the survey results is a fantastic place to start. Even trying to understand what the word motivation means to students is a place to start. Because as I found out through my work, what engagement means to students will differ every time for every group, between different groups, between adults and with youths. So even if you just want to start with what does motivation look like to you, and you have students, you activate their engagement either by discovery learning, where you have them identify within pictures, is in A, B, C, or D. Is that an example of engagement? Why do you think that person C is not engaged, and person B, why are they engaged but not engaged in learning? Have them come to terms to be able to understand the concept and then be able to remix it within their own words. Other ways you can activate their engagement is through writing, through talking, through drawing. And this is before you even get to the picture taking and caption writing of photo voice. Again, I want to stress how within an approach to photo voice, there's so many interactive activities that you can build into other pedagogical contexts. Scaffolding understanding, for example, you can do this kind of thing regularly with other contexts. So when it comes to exploring a photo voice, students already understand the expectations. Next slide, please. So collaborating with adults is level 2. Some of the ways that I did this with students was in setting the ground rules for our expectations together. I provided what my expectations were for the norms when we were going to collaborate in our space together. I was working with about 15 students, and then I also gave them the opportunity to add to my list. And so you're asking students to share what is important to them, to respond to one another. And the way that I did this, on the bottom left here, it's a big poster that says our norms. And you'll see little post-it notes scattered throughout. And what students did was they had a moment to brainstorm a bunch of different things that were important to them when they were collaborating with others. And once we established that, I then had them start moving those post-its into like categories. So even at this point, if you want to start the school year with an activity like this, students are learning small pieces of data analysis. Students are already applying concepts that would be applicable to photo voice throughout. So it's not just now we're doing photo voice, it's immersive and it's part of all the things that we're doing. So you can facilitate brainstorming activities in the same way. You can choose the top 5 results. Maybe your administration has a focus on what for the rest of the school year on what they want to prioritize. You can share that list with students and ask them to rank them from 1 to 5 on what their priorities are, and then choose number 1.
What you don't see in the static slides is the level of engagement and activity among the students. They are totally into this because they're being heard and be and with very little structure around what the expectations are. They're very self-actualized when they're in this experience.
So languaging is really important when collaborating with adults because in schools we know hierarchical power dynamics are like on top of each other and within different silos. So it's really hard to flip the script, but you kind of just practice makes perfect and try and frame what you're talking to students about as something you're doing together. If you want to form some sort of school improvement committee with students, or if you want to have different people in a class that you follow over time, they're your classroom representatives, but they meet with you and they're in charge of the flow of the time that you spend together. So you're positioning them as leaders, you're asking for their feedback, and you're treating them as an equal at the table. That's a very different headspace to get into, but once you do it, students kind of, once they feel like they have the skill, naturally gravitate towards that and become much more authentic in what they share with you. So it's not just about collaborating within photo voice, although that is extremely important. They can collaborate in terms of the structure of the activities we'll do together, the time we're going to spend, the kinds of activities we want to do. We build in decision-making possibilities throughout. But it's about also embedding opportunities for collaboration with adults over the school year as part of your practice. Next slide, please. So in terms of the example of motivation and interest, the overarching question for us could be, what does it look like or feel like when you're motivated and interested at school? This could be a guiding question for your focus group with students. This is the percentage of girls and boys that were interested or motivated. So tell me a little bit about what it looks like. Describe what it feels like. Do you lose track of time? And then on the right here, you'll see sample picture taking prompts. So once you've moved from the post-survey dialogue or the focus group, you're going to come up with prompts that allow students the freedom to interpret the word of motivation and interest, and and there's lots of definitions online and through the learning bar that give you a little more insight into how the learning bar conceptualize these words. But things like, take a photo of something that when learning feels exciting. Take a photo of a time when you felt proud of your work. Or you could even have, in the context of a drama class, have students create a tableau of what does it look like when learning feels hard, and then another student can take a photo. So there's lots of different applications, and here's just a sample of picture taking prompts. And if you're AI friendly, there's another resource for you to create picture taking prompts on the dime, fast, quick, efficiently. You get it. Okay, so next slide. We're going to take a moment here. This is an example of a student photograph. So remember, the prompt is, what does it feel like you're motivated or interested? And this is what a student took a picture of. I want you to take a moment in your mind and tell me, what do you see here? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about it on your own. So once you have come up with what you see here, and remember, as an adult, you carry a very different positionality than youths do, which allows a really great opportunity to share your different positionalities. Let's say you've given a prompt, students go out and they take a picture like this. You can take the opportunity to ask them what they see in this, and then have a dialogue with them about, oh, that's interesting. When I looked at this picture, I noticed that it was upside down. And maybe the student will say something like, well, I wanted it to be upside down because it represents how upside down my world is at school and when I don't feel motivated, or something like that. Or you can use it to interrogate your own bias or understandings or misconceptions or accurate conceptions about what students' experiences are like. For example, why did I just think about why it was upside down instead of thinking about how beautiful it looks that the light hit the hallway in whatever sort of way? So next slide, please. So what this looks like in the classroom is, and you can do this however you want, but I want to just point out the kind of key pedagogical points. I've got students grouped here at different tables. I have about 4 to 5 students per table. Each of them have their own little bin here of the same resources, but in different colors so that they know which one goes in which resource bin to help with developing organizational skills, to help build accountability. They know that they need to put everything back in these bins and then where they belong at the end of our time together. I have the prompt displayed clearly. I have boards on the walls with a photo like the one I showed you and the prompt at the top as well. What do you see here? And then their job is to briefly summarize what they see as a first exposure to practicing understanding other people's perspectives. Next slide, please. So then part of the experience also is figuring out, well, this is what I see, but what could somebody else interpret this as? And so here again, you can see people, the way that these students said, well, I see rails, I see lights, I see lockers. The point of this photo is to show off the hallway. And then they took turns, which is also relevant to the to curricular delivery, doing group presentations to each other. So they knew that at the end of the time together, they would have to share back to the class what they think that this tells a stranger. And I encourage them to make things up as well. Like maybe you don't have any ideas. Okay, totally make up something that it doesn't is completely irrelevant, just to build the skill of feeling comfortable in front of one another. Okay, next slide, please. This is what the student actually said. So there's a hallway. This photo shows that a lot of things happen in the hallway. I hear kids say horrible, racist, and homophobic stuff, and I think they should be getting in trouble for it. So this is their caption in response to the general prompt. Notice that they don't say anything necessarily about motivation or interest, but that's an opportunity for me to engage with this student and say, okay, so tell me about how this impacts your motivation or interest. Tell me what this impacts to your experience of school. But again, this is all to show the importance of using the caption and the photo together to communicate exactly what you want communicated in response to a prompt. Next slide, please. So again, take a moment to look at some of these photos. Think about what your first impression is. For example, do you think that a photo of honor roll would be related to motivation and interest? Why or why not? What do you think about this classroom was important? About what is this photo telling other people? So just give it a moment to think about.
Yeah.
And then next slide.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to this slide for a moment because what the unexpected result, and I would say this is gold, not Vanessa Gold, but gold, is that the picture here really has little to do with what the message that the student is conveying. So you start to get insights into that photo voice for this student became a vehicle for a concern they have, because the photo really has very little to do with the message, which is their unhappiness with these kinds of homophobic and racist remarks being made unanswered or undisciplined. And so there's the real message that you find over and over again in this experience, the unexpected message that photo voice gives students a vehicle for.
Thanks, Joel.
Yep.
So this one is surprising, for example, in the fact that the honor roll is supposed to motivate us, but for some of it, it actually does the contrary. It does not help. So this is maybe an indication to you about the kind of things that are displayed in your school that are maybe not helpful for your student body. Keeping in mind also that year after year, who we get in our schools are going to be completely different, which is why it's really important to cyclically and continuously consult students about their experience about school, and why photo voice is a powerful way to get at that. Creativity, laughing, fun, friends, being outside. These are all parts of what are repeated by students. They want to be socially engaged. They want to be active physically and interactive. Yeah, next slide. So here's just some process pictures again. This is kind of just to show you what photo voice looks like. Once you have the printed pictures, you have students, go back a second. You have students either choose their very own photograph, but it's also interesting for them to have the opportunity to choose somebody else's, because there's a chance that somebody else framed something in a way that really speaks to them. So they choose a photo, paste it to a large piece of paper, and then you give them prompts for writing the questions. What do you see here? Who, what, where, why, when are a helpful way to help them write that. What does this photo tell us about whatever you're looking at? What does it tell us about motivation? What do you think? What do you really want this photo to tell others? And what does this photo tell us about change? Does something need to happen? If so, what are the things that need to change? Once you've done that, students will display their work and then start to group them into themes, putting like things together. And then once they've thematically organized everything and come up with their themes, then they can work on coming up with an exhibit. Next slide.
We'll have to watch our time, man.
Yep. Here are just some examples to show how different photo voice can look from context to context. Next slide, please. This again, you can see that what engagement means and looks like to two different groups is very different. The way that they format their final takeaway message is very different. Both extremely colorful, but interestingly here, you'll see that friends comes up. You'll see that fresh air, being outside, being active, are all part of what their experience of learning is like and what engagement looks like to them. Go ahead, next slide. So at these three schools, these are their final message. This in the middle here, fix school. The perfect school always changes. You want to make school better. We do too. You want to gauge us in learning. We've shown you. You could change one thing tomorrow. The question is, will you? This is what the students came up with in order to really catalyze the adults that they were working with to make changes at their school. And you see throughout their comments that they tell you exactly how. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and they want accountability.
Yes.
You asked, we said, you
Yeah,
must
exactly.
do.
Well, and this one here, it tells you all the different ways that you can change. We need to restart and change everything. Here's how we can do it. Anyway, next slide. So leadership capacity building is the final way we get to level 3. Again, building off of what we learned from level 1, building off of opportunities for collaborating with adults, integrating feedback loops through focus groups that inform school improvement projects, checking in with students. Noel mentioned the check-in as a really important part of the Next School initiative. This check-in can last 10 seconds, 30 seconds with a student when you ask them, hey, how are you motivated at school today? And then you keep a mental log or you keep notes somewhere. And forming a student-led school improvement group that maybe works with adults using photo voice, training people in photo voice so that they can eventually lead their own inquiry as an active member of their school community. These are just a few ways to do that. Next slide. So my number one tip for doing photo voice is just start. Check in with students, normalize using extension activities as part of your practice, invest in some digital cameras and SD cards to get students familiar with using the technology. You can incorporate conversations about perspectives and photo taking as part of digital media literacy. You can take photos of something that respond to or use photos about a particular survey finding to ask students about their experiences. There's lots of ways to start. And number one, that always helps, although it's last, is to have snacks. That really helps.
And perhaps use a phone. Oh yeah, okay. Thought I threw
Thank
that
you
in.
very much. Sorry, I went a little bit over.
Oh, that's all right. We just want to leave some room for questions. And I think the Learning Bar will circulate the PowerPoint. There are a whole range of additional resources in the package. And so you're invited to, if you're interested, to have a look through those once you receive a copy of the PowerPoint presentation.
Yep, and I just see that in the question now. You will get a copy of the presentation. There's interactive links throughout, and there's also at the very end, you'll see a photo voice template. And I kept it very minimalist so that you can reframe it for your context if you want to use your own pictures. But this will help get the ball rolling.
Excellent.
So yes, at this point, we'll open things up to any questions that may have come forth or that will come forth. So you can either put them in the chat, or if you'd like to speak out, simply raise your hand and then we can unmute you and do things that way.
I really hope this was helpful for you. I had a lot of fun putting this together, and I really appreciate, thank you again to the Learning Bar for collaborating with us on this. I can't tell you how important and meaningful it was.
Yes, thank you again, Noel and Vanessa, for sharing your insights and expertise. I'm not sure if anything has already come through in the chat in terms of questions. Colin, Melissa, any updates there?
We have had one come through anonymously. They asked, how long does a typical photovoice project last?
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks for that question. So, it's actually so flexible that you could do it in a single lesson if you wanted, or over the course of 2 or 3, or you could do it all year long. So, depending on your grade, and you can do this with young kids or older kids, even you could do it with the adults and students in your classes. But let's say you've done what I said and you've built in taking pictures and brainstorming and checking in into your daily practice, your regular teaching practice. You can then have students go out, take a picture, have it either printed or have them uploaded to a piece of technology that they have, and then have them write prompts and put those final copies just as a display in your classroom. You could even, if you don't have cameras, have them draw something. I use that in my photo voice work with students as well, just to get them used to figuring out how things can be represented visually. So give them a prompt and say, what does it feel like? What's your favorite place in the school? And have them draw it and then write a caption using those prompts of like, what does this picture say, and what do we need to change about this space? And then have them do a gallery walk together and come up with insights about it. Or you could extend it. My photo voice projects have taken up to 20 hours, whereas meeting with students on a like every third day sort of basis. If you want to do it as part of a first thing that you do in the morning with a little reflection, and or they come to school and they do a show and tell of their photo and then they eventually build. So there's so many different extensions of how you can use this project, and it is just based on what you're comfortable with as an educator.
Thank you for addressing that, Vanessa. An excellent question. Are there any other questions coming in?
Yeah, we had another question. What would be the ideal number of students to work with?
So ideally in the literature, they state between around 7 and 11 students for this. I did it with 15, and I actually think that a classroom context is a really ideal way to initiate and facilitate students with photo voice, because they're used to a format of a classroom. They're understanding, they're kind of preset for learning. All of the kind of technology you would need in a classroom is already there, and it can be integrated into their learning very easily. So if you wanted to do small groups of like 5 students, you could do it like that as little group projects. You could have a whole class develop a guiding prompt together, but 7 to 11 people is the ideal number. And when you have a very active group, 15 can be hard.
Yeah, and also in a full classroom, as you can see from the panels and some of the slides, there are a number of themes that pop out, and you can have smaller groups of students work on each panel or each theme, and therefore subdivide the both the group and the tasks.
Well, yeah, and you could also choose 5 different prompts from your survey findings and have each group do a different prompt and have them interview each other about their experiences, or build the skills kind of collaboration together that way as well.
Okay, last call for questions. Is there anything else coming through?
There
No other
was,
questions, but yeah, we did
oh,
have somebody raise their hand, but it's down again. We can unmute you if you'd like to ask a question. Um, Raise your hand again if you'd like to.
May have been a slip of the keyboard.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, seeing as how there appear to be no further questions, I just want to once again thank Noel and Vanessa today. Thank you so much for sharing. And for those interested in finding out more and getting a deeper understanding of the next initiative and photovoice, as mentioned earlier, we will be following up with some links and resources to all the registered participants here today. And on behalf of the panelists and the Learning Bar, we just want to say thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
everyone.
And we're available to have a discussion with anyone who wants to. So we're interested and motivated. Thank you.